Okay, good evening everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Baruch Haba. We're continuing our shiurim on Sefer Bereshis. And actually, this year's shiurim, 5786, are sponsored by the Israeli family. Le'iloi Nishmas, their grandmother, Malka Bas Yosef, Began Eden Temenu Chasa, she should be Melitza Yishar for her whole family. Asbi Askal Tzedek. Sefer Bereshis is dedicated by Dr. Zakheim and Mishpachta, Le'iloi Nishmas of Shom Eliezer ben Rabbi Yaakov Zakheim, Lila Nishmas Rivka Bas Tuvi Alevi and Rav David ben Rabbi Yaakov Tzedek. And tonight's shir is sponsored by a dear friend of mine in Eretz Yisrael anonymously, as a zechus for Klal Yisrael and for the Geula. Okay, so now we're in Sefer Bereshis. Sefer Bereshis. Make sure you have Maggid Harakiah on Sefer Bereshis. It's available in local Sfarim stores. Make sure you're equipped for Chanukah, the light and the splendor. And the Ben La'ashri, it went to print, and it's having a very special cover design, which first they sent me an email that it's being produced. It's a very rare material. It's going to take 3 weeks to produce and 1 week to deliver. And then they were able to find 400 of them in Eretz Yisrael. So there will be 400 copies sooner rather than later. And the rest of it, I don't know if they have to manufacture the animal first from what I don't know the process. They didn't reveal to me the process of the cover material, but it's in the queue. Okay, so this week we're continuing last week's subject. I have to say, surprisingly, I got a lot of amazing feedback on last week's topic about whether Yitzchak Avinu benched Gomel when he came out of the Akedah, and today we're going to segue into the halachic ramifications of it. Just to refresh your memory, we discussed the dream that the father of the Chida appeared before the great Rabbi Lezer Nachum, the Rishon LeTzion, the author of Chazoi Nachum. The father of the Chida was Rabbeinu Zerachia, Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia Azulai, and he appears to Rabbi Eliezer Nachum, and Rabbi Eliezer Nachum asks him in a dream, did Yitzchak Avinu bench Gomel when he came off of the Akedah? He asked him, what about the 4 Tanoim that entered the Pardes? Some of them were in mortal danger. Some of them did not survive. Did they bench Gomel? Did Rabbi Akiva bench Gomel when he emerged from the Pardes? Also the Kohen Gadol, when he comes out of the Kadosh HaKadoshim, does the Kohen Gadol bench Gomel? And if you remember, in the dream, what did Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia reply? He didn't give an answer in the dream. However, in a state of awakeness, Rabbi Lezer Nachum came to Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia, and he asked him these shailas, and the father of the Chida gave the following answer. Number 1, the Chachamim never were masakein Gomel. So somebody wanted to know, is Gomel a d'oraisa or d'Rabbanan? It's d'Rabbanan, okay? The Chachamim were not masakein Gomel, only if the tzara comes to a person against their will, without their knowledge, without their desire, and a miracle happens. Somebody became sick, somebody had to traverse the sea, somebody had to traverse a desert. However, if God commands a person to be in a situation, Hashem commanded Abraham to shech Yitzchak, then the Chachamim were never masakein Gomel, and asks Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia, why are you asking me about the Akedah? Why didn't you ask me if Avram Avinu should bench Gomel when he came out of Ur Kasdim, or Moshe Rabbeinu when he went up to Shamayim, or Hanani, Mishael, Azariah when they were saved by the fire, or Daniel when he was saved from the lion's den? So Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia said, no, you only bench Gomel if something happens to you against your will, not if you're commanded by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moreover, Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia said the true story is that when Avram Avinu picked up the knife at the Akedah, Yitzchak's soul departed. And in that case, Yitzchak actually died. So why would he bench Gomel? He wasn't saved. He was actually resurrected. So the question is, did he make Mechaye HaMesim? And the answer to that is, of course he did. That's the second bracha of Shemona Esrei. Regarding those who are nichnas lepardes, they didn't actually enter, the botanical gardens. It was a mystical arena, and why would they bench Gomel? Just because their minds were were contemplating the secrets of the universe. And again, did the Kohen Gadol bench Gomel when he came out of the Lefnai V'Lefnim? No, the Kohen Gadol is also commanded not to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And therefore the conclusion of Rabbi Yitzchak Harakiah is that there is no Gomel said in any of the above mentioned circumstances, not when Yitzchak went to the Akedah, not the 4 that entered the Pardes, and now when the Kohen Gadol entered Lefnai V'Lefnim. Rabbi Eliezer Nachum disagreed with Rabbi Yitzchak Harakiah. Rabbi Eliezer Nachum said, number 1, if Hashem had to designate an aisle in lieu of Yitzchak, and Avram Avinu, and which obviously required special rachmanus, also the Perek Rabbi Eliezer brings that the Malachi Asharei said to Hashem, "You're a rachum v'chanun." So obviously he needed great rachmanus. So of course he had to thank and bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you wanted to know why I didn't ask you about Avram Avinu Meor Kazdim? I'm not the one who asked the question. It was the Baal HaChaloim who asked the question. You came to me in a dream, and in a dream, the master of dreams asked you the question. And regarding the 4 that entered the Pardes, if they entered a dangerous situation, they certainly had a bench Gomel. Why would this be any worse than somebody who wakes up in the morning, who they didn't actually die in the evening, and yet when they wake up they say Hamachazir neshamos lifgarim meisim, even though they didn't actually die? So too, in all these situations, let's say the 4 that went to the Pardes, they didn't actually enter an orchard, but they were saved, and therefore they should bench Gomel. This is like a classic historical conversation between Rabbi Yitzchak Harakiah Azulai. As we mentioned, he's buried in Har HaZeisim, at the foot of Har HaZeisim, next to Zechariah Hanavi. Happens to be this Shabbos is the yahrzeit of the great grandfather of the Chida, Rabbi Avram Azulai, not to be confused with Rabbi Avram Azulai, not to be confused with Rabbi Avram Azulai, and not to be confused with Rabbi Avram Azulai. There were 4 Rabbi Avram Azulais. The first one was Miyotzei Sfarad, was one of the Gerushei Sfarad. He's the father of the Azulai family, and he came from Spain in 1492 to Fez, and very little is known about him. Then you have the great-great-grandfather of the Chida, who came from Fez to Hebron. He's buried in Hebron. He's the great Chesed Li Avram. He wrote a sefer, I believe it's called Arba Meos Shekel. He also wrote a sefer, Chesed Li Avram, and in it he has many mystical secrets, one of them being that there's no city in the world more predisposed to understand Kabbalah than the city of Tzfas, which the Chassam Sofer summarily dismisses as out of hand. That's the Chida's great-great-grandfather. Then you have a descendant of Rabbi Avram Azulai, named Rabbi Avram Azulai, who is the great Rav and Makobel in Marrakesh. And then his grandson was also Rabbi Avram Azulai. In any event, the most well-known Rabbi Avram Azulai, his yahrzeit is this Shabbos. Okay, so this is a conversation between Rabbi Yitzchak Harakiah and Rabbi Eliezer Nachum. You would think this is more of a theoretical question. This is more an interesting question to ponder and doesn't really have halachic ramification. But as we're going to see, that this debate of whether Yitzchak Avinu said Gomel when he came off the Akedah actually has many halachic ramifications. We're going to start with Shalos HaTshuvos Leiv Chaim, Chela Gimel, Siman Nun Gimel. Here you have a guy, he had enough. He couldn't take it anymore. Why? Life is really just not going his way. You know, nobody respects him. He gets Galila every Monday and Thursday. They give him Galila and other terrible injustices. And he decides that for supper, instead of drinking water or instead of drinking yayin, he's going to poison himself. And what happened? In the last second, he drank the poison. And they took him to the hospital. And the miraculously, as he gets to the emergency room and everyone else is sitting there for 48 days, he goes right in. They take him right in, and they save his life. And now he comes to shul the next morning. He looks a little, little pale. They say, "What happened?" He said, "It's terrible. You wouldn't believe what happened." "What happened?" "Nothing I do works out." "What did you do?" He said he tried to kill himself, and they saved his life. Does he bench Gomel? Does he bench Gomel? That's the question brought in Shalos Tshuvas Lev Chaim of Reb Chaim Falaji, Chela Gimel, Siman Nun Gimel. And Reb Chaim Falaji says that in his opinion, why would this be different than any person who was ill and has a recovery? So this person had temporary illness, temporary insanity. He tried to kill himself, and he was unsuccessful. So he should bench Gomel. And says Reb Chaim Falaji, look, I know there's a very big difference between these cases, because in one case, the person was sick against their will. In the other case, the person purposely tried to kill himself. So maybe we can't prove that you'd be obligated to bench Gomel. Says Reb Chaim Falaji, the main takana of Gomel is for the healing, for the salvation, that heaven had mercy on you. So it doesn't matter how you got into the jam, whether Hashem put you in the jam or you put yourself in the jam. You're not making a bracha on the jam, you're making a bracha on the salvation. So in both cases, you're saved. In fact, Reb Chaim Falaji says you could argue there's a bigger chiyuv Gomel if you save yourself from attempted if you're saved from attempted suicide than if you had an illness. You know why? Because the nusach of the bracha is HaGomel l'chayavim toivais. Hashem bestows kindness to the guilty. So who's more guilty? A guy who's sick because of his sins, or a guy who tried to kill himself? A guy who tried to kill himself is the very epitome of guilty. So, says Reb Chaim Falaji, he definitely should bench Gomel. This bracha is very appropriate for him. He's saying, HaGomel, Hashem who bestows kindness, l'chayavim, for those who are guilty. This guy is an avaryan, he's a sinner. He almost lost his share in the world to come. Hashem had mercy on him in this world and in the next world. Especially in light of the fact that Shulchan Aruch says it's not only someone who crosses a sea or crosses a desert. Anyone who's bailed out of any difficult situation should have to bench Gomel. Besides that, Reb Chaim Falaji says, there's a lot more this guy has to do. He should have to do tshuva for trying to take his life. And he should actually not only bench Gomel, he should say Hallel HaGadol, that God had mercy on him in his complete insanity. And he should give a lot of tzedakah and support those who learn Torah. And he should accept upon himself, from now on, not only is he not going to try to kill himself, from now on he's going to wear a seatbelt in the back seat. He's never going to even put himself in safek sakana. The way to do tshuva for not taking care of yourself is going the extra mile to be extra careful. So from now on, he's going to be taking multivitamins. He's going to look 4 ways before he crosses the street. And he's gonna exercise, he's gonna eat omega-3 fish oil, and he's gonna have flaxseed. Because that makes you live much longer. Flaxseed. But I can't get into that right now, okay? So, then Reb Chaim Falaji says that there's a very similar shaila addressed by Reb Chaim Nisim about the story in the Gemara Megillah that Rabbah got up and he shechted Reb Zera. And then when Rabbah woke up from his stupor, he realized, maybe he went a little bit overboard in the Simchas Purim. So he brought Reb Zera back to life. Did Reb Zera bench Gomel? And Reb Chaim Nisim says, sure he did. And then he goes on to deal with the following halachic dilemma. When Rabbah killed Reb Zera's children inherited him. When Rabbah brought Reb Zera back to life, does he get his money back? There's no halacha. Once your children inherit you, there are no backsies. How you get it back from them? You you reverse the process of inheritance. There's no way to reverse the process of inheritance. Did anyone ever, after they bury them, come out of the kever and make a claim on the... Can't do that. No more. So that was a shaila raised by Reb Chaim Nisim.
Is he still a father?
Well, there are a lot of different shailas. Is he still a husband?
Right, that too.
Right? Could his wife remarry? Right? Imagine, he disappeared. He went to a Purim party. He came. He went to a Purim party. He got killed. He came back to life. Does he need a new kedushin? Okay, I'm using a lot of discretion now. Now, says Reb Chaim Falaji, you ready for this? I'm going to bring a raya that you're obligated to bench Gomel if you try to kill yourself and you're unsuccessful, from the shaila that the father of the Chida, Rabbi Yitzchak Harakiah, discussed with Rabbi Nachum. Okay? I'm going to bring a raya. Now, what would you say? The father of the Chida said that when Yitzchak came back from the Akedah, he did not bench Gomel. And Rabbi Nachum said he did bench Gomel. What would you think these respective opinions hold about someone who tried to kill themselves? Do they bench Gomel if they're unsuccessful? Amazingly, Reb Chaim Falaji says, I'll prove that the father of the Chida, who says Yitzchak did not bench Gomel, would hold that if you try to kill yourself, not you, if someone, heaven forbid, is not successful, they would have to bench Gomel. Why? Because why did the father of the Chida say that Yitzchak did not bench Gomel? Because you only bench Gomel if it's a situation against your will. But if God commands you to do it, you don't bench Gomel. The guy who tries to kill themselves, God commanded them to try to kill themselves. God commanded them not to kill themselves. The whole logic of the father Chida is that if you're commanded to do a mitzvah and you're endangering yourself and you're saved, you don't bench Gomel. But what if you're commanded not to do something and you do it anyway and you're saved? Then of course you would bench Gomel. Says Reb Chaim Falaji, the father of the Chida obviously holds that someone who tries to take their life would have to bench Gomel, and that's his conclusion. That someone who tries to kill themselves would have to bench Gomel. And the raya he brings is from the father of the Chida. Interestingly, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef wrote a tshuva on this topic. Okay? In Yechavadas. Now the difference between Yabia Omer and Yechavadas, Yabia Omer are extremely lengthy tshuvos. Yechavadas are shorter tshuvos. I believe these are tshuvos that Rabbi Ovadia discussed on the radio. Rabbi Ovadia was a regular on the radio. People would ask questions, and he would give more abridged answers. Abridged means only a few pages as opposed to, dozens and dozens of oisiyos. Rabbi Ovadia was asked, somebody who tries to kill themselves, or let's say someone is not careful with their health. Every night they have deep fries, and double hamburgers covered with pastrami, and then all of a sudden they're not in good cardiac shape, and miracle of miracles, the doctors saved their life. Do you bench Gomel, or do you say the guy brought it on himself? Nobody told him he should have red meat and fried food 3 meals a day every single day. So what would the halacha be if a person is negligent with their health and they bring certain health conditions upon themselves and then they're miraculously saved? Do they bench Gomel? So Rav Ovadia says something very interesting. Rav Ovadia says someone who tries to take their life is not allowed to bench Gomel. Not only they're not allowed to bench Gomel, if they bench Gomel, their blessing is a disgrace. Because basically what they're doing is they're publicizing their sin. Hey everyone, let's take a 3-minute break now in the middle of the Kriyas HaTorah. I just wanted to let everybody know that, last night the guy says he tried to poison himself, and he's such a shlamazel, he does everything wrong. He couldn't even kill himself. Rabbi Vadia said, what a disgrace. He's make a bracha, he's going to bench Gomel? No, you're not to bench Gomel. The Tzitz Eliezer agrees you're not to bench Gomel. Moreover, the Minchas Elazar says that someone who endangers their life to make money and they're saved miraculously cannot bench Gomel. However, if somebody is negligent with their health and then they're miraculously saved, they would bench Gomel. Even though one of the great Sephardic Gedolim, Rabbi Avadia Hodaya, you ever hear Rabbi Avadia Hodaya says you do not bench Gomel? Rabbi Avadia says that he disagrees. If someone is negligent in their health, they would in fact bench Gomel. So it's an interesting machlokes. Reb Chaim Falaji says someone who tries to take their life, you bench Gomel if you're saved. Rabbi Avadia says you're not allowed to bench Gomel. Okay, the reason we're speaking about this topic is not for any practical reason. It's just really to show that this, so to speak, late night conversation where the father of the Chida comes to Rabbi Elazar Nachum in his dream and they're discussing the theoretical, whether Yitzchak bench Gomel after the Akedah, it has halachic nafkaminas. It's interesting, there's a sefer, I had never seen it before, called Mevaser Toiv, from the Biala Rebbe, and the Biala Rebbe discusses many different questions about benching Gomel, and he brings a tshuva from Rabbi Zriel Hildersheimer, who agrees with Reb Chaim Falaji that someone who tries to take their life and they're miraculously saved, they would in fact bench Gomel. And then he brings something very interesting. You know, this is the most common question, by the way, that rabbis get. I'm telling you, if we made a rabbi convention now, 99 out of 100 would agree that this is the most common shaila. People love asking Gomel questions. Why? Because everyone has a need. There's a human need to ask a shaila, right? So what are you going to ask the rabbi? Questions that actually affect your life? Why would you want to put your life into, you're going to ask somebody a question like what's the right thing to do and how I live my life? Nah, that's too dangerous. Who actually has the courage to ask a real shaila? So therefore most shailas are, should I bench Gomel? What happened? What happened? You know, I was supposed to, you know, I heard there was a plane and yeah, and what happened? What happened was I didn't go on it. Were you going to go on it? No, I never was going to. Why didn't you go on it? Because I don't have a travel agent. Why don't you have a travel agent? I don't even know any travel agents. So why should you bench Gomel? Because I wasn't on the plane. You know, you ever hear these shilas? You know, people, they hear that of this terrible disaster, and usually they figure out a way why they were supposed to have been there. Now,
happened to my father-in-law. Yeah.
I know. Believe me, we'll go around the room. Most people say it happened to them.
He had tickets to fly back, and somebody told him to go home early from Belgium.
Say it publicly, yeah?
And the plane that he was supposed to be on got blown up or something.
See, this tzaddik over here, his father-in-law was on. You weren't the one who was going to blow it up, no?
I think he went there.
Yeah, so the question is like this, right? If you avoid a situation altogether, in other words, if somebody's in an accident and nothing and they walk out unscathed, they bench Gomel. But what if someone's in a car and they swerve and they miraculously swerve and nothing happens? Do you bench Gomel? You don't bench Gomel. Why? Because they were never in the situation to begin with. You know, they averted the situation altogether. So you only bench Gomel when you're in the danger and you're saved from the danger. But the fact that you know, so a guy asked me once, no, I'm joking, should he bench Gomel? Why? Because he wasn't at the tsunami. Was he supposed to be there? No. You know, but imagine if he was, he wouldn't have made it. So that you don't bench Gomel for that.
What about people that survived 9/11? Because
they were in the building?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if somebody was in the building, and let's say 99 out of 100 people, let's say, in other words, if somebody's in a dangerous situation, and in reasonable likelihood one should not survive that dangerous situation, then you don't bench Gomel. But let's say somebody was supposed to have been in the building, and a miracle happened.
He was davening slichus that morning and he came late.
So he should thank Hashem. He should say Haidul Hashem ki tov gilam chasdai. He should be very grateful, but he can't bench Gomel. Okay, he was never in the dangerous situation. Now, surely it's preferable not to be in the dangerous situation to begin with. But those are the guidelines of Gomel. Or are they? There's a big question. How do you define what the obligation of Gomel is? Is the obligation of Gomel for being in a tzara and being saved from it? Or is Gomel come for the miracle of Hashem? If it comes to the miracle, maybe I didn't have to be in the tzara. If it comes from being extricated from the tzara, then you had to have been in it. So the Biala Rebbe says, he brings from the Maral and the Makar Chaim, that the Gomel is not for the miracle, it's for being extricated from the situation. And he says that somebody who tried to take their own life, he says, would not bench Gomel. But if somebody wanted to take their whole life, so this is the way he says it. The person wasn't in the tzara and extricated. The person put himself in the tzara. The chiyuv of, in other words, if the obligation of Gomel is you're stuck in a bad situation, God pulled you out. So if you put yourself in the situation to begin with, you would not be chayiv to bench Gomel. But if the obligation of Gomel is for the miracle of Hashem, then we don't really care how you got there. You'll bench Gomel for the miracle. And the upshot is, for the most part, we say that Gomel is for being extricated from a dangerous situation, not just for the miracle per se. Okay, so that's also an important yesod in benching Gomel. You're not saying Gomel just for the miracle. It's for being in a situation that was, so to speak, against your will, and then being extricated from it. Here's one more very interesting halachic ramification from the discussion of Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia Azulai and the Chazon Nachum. And that is Shalos Teshuvos Minchas Yitzchak Chelek Beis Siman Mem Zayin. Do you say Gomel when you travel by airplane? Okay, we started discussing this last week. Do you say Gomel when you travel by airplane? So there's a question. Do you say Gomel? Let's say you fly from New York to Washington. You bench Gomel? You fly from New York to Florida. You bench Gomel? What are the parameters of benching Gomel? Is it only when it's very dangerous? Is it more or less dangerous when you fly more locally than if you fly across the country, if you fly internationally? Is it only if you fly over the waters? So first, the Minchas Yitzchak brings the Yabia Omer, that Rabbi Vadia says that whenever you fly in the airplane, you bench Gomel. So the Minchas Yitzchak says, okay, on the one hand, maybe that indicates that flying in an airplane is always a situation where you bench Gomel, but it's not a raya at all, because Rav Vadia Yosef was a Sfardi. And Sfardis, they always bench Gomel. The Mechaber says, even when you take a flight from here to Florida, Sfardim will bench Gomel, according to Rabbi Vadia. So therefore, you can't prove from him that airplane travel will always require Gomel. But then he says, they say, they told me the name of the Satmar Rebbe, that when you fly to Eretz Yisrael, you fly internationally, you would bench Gomel. But, he says, the Belzer Rebbe paskined that when you travel by airplane, you say Gomel without Hashem's name. That's a famous psak of the Belzer Rebbe. When you travel by airplane, you bench Gomel without the name of Hashem. If I'm not mistaken, Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky said the same. And his logic is that airplane travel today is very safe. And therefore, Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky says even in the 9 days, airplane travel could be okay. But the Minchas Yitzchak says, let me explain to you some of the rationale of the psak of the Belzer Rebbe. By the way, the minhag in general is if you're flying internationally, you will bench Gomel. If you fly, more domestically in general, unless Rav Moshe says, I believe, any flight over 72 minutes, you're going to bench Gomel. But in general, the minhag is you only bench Gomel if you fly overseas. It says in Minchas Yitzchak, let me explain to you the rationale of the Belzer Rebbe, why you wouldn't bench Gomel with the name of Hashem when you fly in an airplane. And you know who it's based on? The same source that Reb Chaim Falaji cited, that he wanted to prove that if somebody tries to kill themselves, they don't bench Gomel. They would bench Gomel, because you only bench Gomel if you're commanded to do something. If you're not commanded to do it, if you're commanded not to do it, you would bench Gomel. The Minchas Yitzchak says something very interesting. It says in Minchas Yitzchak, didn't the father of the Chida say that you only bench Gomel when the danger is against your will? You'll say, but Yitzchak was also against his will. He didn't want to go to the Akedah. It wasn't against his will. Hashem told him to do it. He didn't have to do it. He decided to do it, and he's saved. You don't bench Gomel. He agreed to do it willingly. By Yitzchak, he agreed to do it willingly. Therefore, he did not bench Gomel. But when someone travels across a desert, he has no other way to get there. Somebody crosses a sea, he has no other way to get there. Says the Minchas Yitzchak, who asked the guy to take an airplane? An airplane is more dangerous than going on a boat or going on a camel. Who asked the guy to fly thousands of feet in the air? Well, the guy wants to do it. Why is he putting himself in such danger? He decided to do it. You don't bench Gomel when you decide. He put himself in the situation to begin with. You don't bench Gomel when you put yourself in the situation. Again, the Minchas Yitzchak is, so to speak, citing the father of the Chida and applying it to airplane travel. Now, I think nowadays, you could strongly make the case that it's probably safer to travel on an airplane than to take a sailboat across the ocean, or some kind of ship with holes in it across the ocean, or to take some kind of camel through the desert, trying to pass through marauders or dangerous areas. But just you see how he's citing the father of the Chida and trying to apply it to modern day air travel. So this is another source for this is another way that the conversation between the father of the Chida and Rabbi Elazar Nachum has a practical ramifications. So on the one hand, Reb Chaim Falaji cites the father of the Chida, that if somebody tried to take their own life, they would bench Gomel for a failed attempt. On the other hand, it could serve possibly as a support that you would not bench Gomel on airplane travel. Halacha l'maisa, the minhag is we do bench Gomel on at least an international flight. And this conversation between Rabbi Elazar Nachum and the father of the Chida, even though the Chida brought it down, it's interesting. The Chida says he brought it down so that these two tzaddikim, his Rebbe and his father's lips, should continue to reverberate even after their departure from this world. So with all of the modern shilas that are based upon their conversation, there's no doubt that their lips are continuing to reverberate for many generations. Okay, that's tonight's share.
Is there still a meaning of Oila Regel?
Why didn't you answer? Why isn't mitzvah b'avera?
What's mitzvah b'avera?
Committing suicide.
That's an avera. The fact that in the after mitzvah b'avera is if it's simultaneously. Now there's a separate question. It's already.
So how do you make bracha on something that you did on avera?
You're not making a bracha on the avera. You're making a bracha on the fact that you were saved. The salvation wasn't. You're right. The guy did an avera,
So you're going to make a bracha on it because the guy attempted to do an Aveira.
No, you're not making a bracha on the attempt to do. You're making a bracha that the Aveira he attempted to do did not result in his, did not result in his demise.
So you consider that Sukkah the Tula then also.
No, sukkah and lulav, the guy only was able to procure a sukkah and fulfill the mitzvah because he stole something.
The same thing, this bracha could only be done at this more point is if he attempts to make suicide. All right.
Yeah, by the sukkah, the item in which right now he's doing the mitzvah is stolen. Right now, presently, in order to do the mitzvah. This guy, yesterday he tried to kill himself. Right now, though, he's alive. The Aveira is not clear and present in front of him, assisting in the performance of the bracha that he's doing, You can
argue this. He's not taking the bracha not that he's alive now. He's making a bracha that yesterday was a failure.
He can say, you make a bracha, he didn't do the Aveira. It's not mitzvah Aveira. He didn't do it.
Is there still a mitzvah on the regular?
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day. Good night, everyone. Shkaya.
Is there still
Yeah.
a mitzvah?
Response. Is that a raya?